Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Maha Hosain Aziz, a global citizen with strong Pakistani roots. I lived in 7 countries by age 14 and have not stopped travel since then. In the past decade or so, I've been a professor based in the MA-IR program at NYU, also leading the annual Top 10 Global Risk Predictions Project with NYU and crowdsourced consultancy Wikistrat, and I also served a 2-year term on the Global Future Council on Risk at the World Economic Forum. I am the author of bestseller Future World Order and creator of the award-winning VR/AR political comic book, The Global Kid. The goal of all my work, of all my content, is simply to help others make better sense of a world of growing global risk so they can make better decisions. What's next in a post-pandemic, post-hegemonic era? Through my lectures, speeches, books, comics, I do my best to enlighten others about how these risks may evolve. I use my platform to explore how these future trends may impact different actors, including the individual, the company, government, and others in this rather dangerous era of shock events. Future World Order predicted the steady decline of a US-driven international system as hegemony waned, democracy weakened, globalization faced a populist backlash, and hate surged pre-pandemic. These trends will persist this decade. The reality is the global pandemic reaffirmed and even accelerated some of these trends, reminding us of the lack of US leadership around the world and even waning political leadership in most countries as governments struggled to tackle COVID-19. Hate also evolved with the rise of an East Asian backlash. As for the Ukraine war, in some ways you might argue that it's had a positive impact in terms of revitalizing US leadership, given its response to Russia's invasion. But it has also shown the world that the EU is a significant geopolitical player, and it seems the EU has regained its sense of unity. One might also say that Zelensky of Ukraine has reminded us, rather, that democracy is worth fighting for after years of global democratic decline. In the sequel, Global Spring, I go into more detail about how this post-hegemonic, post-pandemic era will evolve geopolitically, politically, economically, and socially. But I try to offer less gloom and doom, instead considering more positive predictions. For instance, how climate tech may be what determines the next big power, how CBDCs may actually spur growth as it allows for more financial inclusion, or even how the next type of public intellectual may be climate focused, telling us how to live more sustainably as we transition to climate adaptation this decade. We published our 7th annual NYU Wikistrat Top 10 Global Risk List in January in Newsweek. I will highlight 3 of those risks. Number 1, great power competition in a leaderless world. Yes, the US and China are competing, and tensions have risen amid spy balloons and tech trade wars, but don't forget about the evolving China-Russia partnership of no limits that will further challenge the US global position, heightening risk around the world. Number 2, more climate events will inevitably lead to more climate refugees this year. Yes, at COP27, where I actually was fortunate to speak, progress was made with the Loss and Damage Fund, historic. Yet we still don't know who will contribute to the fund. It's unlikely as well that we will meet our mitigation target. For now, we can expect more climate events leading to more refugees who have limited options. Number 3, this year, extremism will continue to evolve, especially online. We know that hate will persist on social media platforms as big tech fails to rein it in, but expect hate groups to move more deeply into the Web3 space, the decentralized digital arena, which we are all, frankly, are still making sense of. Apparently, ISIS has already used an NFT to spread its message. Very concerning. Here are 3 risks to consider for this decade. Number 1, the US dollar will be challenged in international trade. Crypto is still a wild card, but it's worth noting that the rise of other currencies, for instance, the one being developed by the BRIC countries and Saudi Arabia, will challenge the US dollar as the reserve currency. Number 2, if governments don't act quick enough, someone may take matters into their own hands and hack the planet, whether it's a billionaire, a startup, or both. This could involve a form of solar geoengineering, and to be honest, it's already being attempted by one US-based startup. Dangerous. Regulation is needed now. Number 3, this decade, a significant risk will be that citizens will likely feel more frustrated with government for not doing enough to mitigate climate change or to help us adapt. And I wonder, could this anti-government sentiment evolve into a form of eco-terrorism? It's plausible. 3 opportunities. Let's start with an obvious one. Number 1, more women in the workforce will boost post-COVID, post-war growth. That would add 12 trillion to the global economy, according to a McKinsey study. If the focus is in blockchain, that could also add 1 trillion to the global GDP, according to PwC. Related to that, number 2, satellite internet could be a game changer. We know that all sorts of tech will be shaping the world order this decade, whether it's AI, quantum computing, semiconductors, but it's satellite internet that could be the game changer in creating opportunity for online education and jobs in places that previously had no access. Internet access is a human right after all, according to the UN. Number 3, anything related to climate solutions is worth focusing on this decade. Climate tech startups will likely be the next wave of unicorns, but more focus on climate education in schools, outside schools, will also be key. We each need to be educated on how best to live sustainably. We need guidance to reduce our carbon footprint in our daily lives. My goal is to keep fulfilling my purpose, to help others make sense of a world of growing global risk in this era of shock events, so that they can make better decisions in their lives. That includes sharing the sequel to Future World Order, Global Spring. I'm also working on the next sequel, 10 Shock Events by 2030, with a focus on geopolitical, political, economic, and social shocks. I also look forward to my next iteration of political comic books, preparing an updated edition of The Global Kid, and also creating Evolution, a political comic book for grown-ups, revealing how certain risks may evolve in the future. On a more personal level, I'm just getting my priorities in order with a renewed focus on productivity, health, and family as our post-pandemic era begins. And perhaps you are doing this as well. I wish you the very best, and thank you for listening.